Hey guys, welcome to the Friday edition of Living Above the Level of Mediocrity. Considering the quick progression of events that's taken place in my business over the last week, I'd say this is an apropos topic. Today we're going to look at it starts in your mind. And this will also be dealing with spiritual aspects, okay? Soaring never just happens. It's the result of a strong mental effort, thinking clearly, courageously, and even confidently. No one ever oozed their way out of mediocrity like a slug, okay? Everyone I know who models a high level of excellence has won the battle of the mind and taken the right thoughts captive. The risks notwithstanding, these individuals have chosen to fill the role of an active pen, flowing with ink rather than a passive blotter that only sits and soaks up what others do. Okay, they've decided to get personally involved with life rather than sit back, frowning, watching life dwindle or trickle and ultimately stagnate. And I hope that's not you. So let's jump to we become what we think. I'm sure it comes as no surprise to most of us that we act out precisely what we take in. In other words, we become what we think. Long before the familiar line found its way into Psychology 101 and hyped up sales meetings, the Bible included it in one of its ancient scrolls. It just said it a little different way. For as a man thinks within himself, so he is. And that's from Proverbs 23:7. The secret of a life of excellence or living it is merely a matter of thinking thoughts of excellence, right? Really, it's a matter of programming our minds with the kind of information that will set us free. Free to be all that God meant us to be, free to soar. And of course, it will take a while and it might be painful, but what a metamorphosis, just like a caterpillar, okay? However, if we're Christians, we should know that we have a tempter, that our battle is not just physical, but spiritual. And this may not speak or relate to all of you, and that's okay, but I want you to know where I'm coming from with this. Okay, let me get to the heart of the issue. Since the mind holds the secrets of soaring, the enemy of our souls has made the human mind the bullseye of his target. His most insidious and strategic moves are made upon the mind. By affecting the way we think, he is able to keep our lives on a mediocre level. Okay, there are a couple of extremely significant sections in the New Testament that address Satan's scheming nature, but obviously for brevity's sake, I won't go into too much depth, but let's look real quick at Ephesians 6:10 through 11. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the full armor of God that you may be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. Notice schemes of the devil here, which is from the Greek methodia, from where we get our English word method. The Amplified Bible kind of captures the correct idea by rendering it strategies of the devil. So we need to be aware of this. Again, as I mentioned earlier, our struggle is not against flesh and blood. Okay. The other verse is 2 Corinthians 10:3 through 5, which is similar in focus, and it states, "For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but divinely powerful for the destruction of fortresses. We are destroying speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God. And we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ." What descriptive language. I mean, clearly the scenes of a battle are woven through these lines. I mean, you can almost smell smoke and hear the reports of massive weapons, except for one problem. Again, as we said, this isn't a war according to the flesh, right? As we learned earlier, it's a mind-oriented struggle, a warfare not of the flesh. It takes place in the invisible, intangible realm of the mind. So here we're at the section, the battle and the insidious strategy. Even though Paul uses military words and ideas that suggest physical combat, it's imperative that we keep the right perspective. Everything being described in 2 Corinthians 10:3 through 5 occurs right here in the mind. What we find here is the strategy used against us to keep us ineffective and defeated. In other words, mediocre. Once the Lord breaks through the wall-like fortress and speculations, he encounters those lofty things. Remember the verse, destroying everything raised up against the knowledge of God? So a book by Roger Van Ock provides insights into what he calls mental locks. In his creative book, interesting title, A Whack on the Side of the Head. Wow. He lists no less than 10 statements that hold us back. And they keep us from soaring into new innovative realms. And if you're like me, you're probably going to smile or chuckle by the time you get to the end of the list, because we've pretty much heard of most of our life and said some of them so much they're kind of cast into mental concrete. So here they are. The right answer. That's not logical. Follow the rules. Be practical. Avoid ambiguity. To err is wrong. Play is frivolous. That's not my area. Don't be foolish. I'm not creative. Well, God is interested in our breaking free from such locks. He realizes each lofty thing has dug in its heels and must be dislodged. And as we often say, old habits are hard to break, aren't they? That's kind of true. For too many years, we've convinced ourselves that we lack this or we cannot do that. We'll say stuff like we shouldn't risk, or we're sure to fail, right? Or we ought to accept the status quo as our standard. But these programmed lofty things must be conquered. We occasionally need a whack on the side of our head, right? I mean, we all need correction, huh? And what's God's ultimate goal? Well, just as we read in 2 Corinthians 10:5, to take every thought captive. When he invades those lofty areas, his plan is to transform the old thoughts that defeat us into new thoughts that encourage us. And he has to repattern our whole way of thinking. And he is engaged in doing that continually because old habits are so hard to break, right? We know that. So can you still see why those reactions you've had for dozens of years are still problem areas? Finally, you have some insight on your battle with whether it be lust, envy, pride, jealousy, or extreme perfectionism, or a negative critical spirit. So how do we conquer this? Well, glad you asked. To conquer mediocrity, we need a mental metamorphosis like the caterpillar. Okay, the essential question isn't difficult to state. How? Well, how can I, as a person who's absorbed so many years of mediocre thinking, change? It is a process that will be difficult, demanding, and lengthy, but I think the results will be sweet. Okay? And if you're really serious about conquering mediocrity, then Swindoll has 3 words to offer: memorize, personalize, and analyze. Okay? The first is memorize. Okay, so in order for old defeating thoughts to be invaded, conquered, and replaced by new victorious ones, a process of reconstruction must transfer. We rebuild the old framework. To be honest, the best place to begin this process of mental cleansing is with the all-important discipline of memorizing Scripture. And I realize this doesn't sound very sophisticated or intellectual, especially in this day and age, but God's book is full of powerful ammunition. And dislodging negative and demoralizing thoughts requires aggressive action. And we don't have time to get into a whole bunch here, but the next is going to be personalized. So here's where the excitement intensifies. As you begin the process of replacing old negative thoughts with new and encouraging ones, put yourself in the pages of the Bible. Start using words like I, me, my, mine as you come across meaningful statements or sections of scriptures. Get the idea? And that's called personalizing Scripture, and it's powerful, I might add, too. The last one is analyze. Okay, so instead of continuing to tell yourself you are a little more than a helpless victim, take charge. And as soon as you catch yourself responding negatively or defensively, think, analyze the situation. Then ask yourself a few tough questions like, why am I getting so hot and bothered by this? Or is there something I'm afraid of? Or maybe, am I reacting negatively because I have reason or simply because I formed some bad habits? Okay, yes, these are thought questions, so that's tough, but without such analysis, we really tend to become like those around us or get even worse. So breaking long-standing mental habits is neither easy nor quick, but those who don't can erode into cranky, crotchety folks who wind up alone and miserable, and I don't think we want to be there, right? So this is how we start to live above the level of mediocrity, folks. Thanks so much for joining me today. Tune in next time for It Involves Another Kingdom. And please let me know if this has impacted you or got you to think different, or if you have any questions. I'm here to help. Have a great weekend, guys. Bye-bye.